This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, I'm talking about some stuff that I've been thinking about lately. And, ever since I've completed the Appalachian Trail, obviously my passion for the outdoors has just exploded in, a ton of different ways. The podcast, I've got the little short films I've made, I got documentary stuff, I got travel stuff I'm working on all the time. I've been doing a lot more traveling, talking to a wide variety of people about the outdoors, hunting, fishing, conservation, travel, adventure, all of this stuff. And, it kind of got me thinking ever since I've been home and considering, where my food comes from and, ethics of hunting and fishing and getting your own food compared to buying your own food at the grocery store and things of that nature. I've almost been on this quest to get my own food without having like an actual plan to do that. I mean, I knew I wanted to harvest deer. I knew I wanted to, be proficient in doing that, which came, with doing that came learning about deer habitat, learning about wildlife conservation. I always kind of take things to the extreme. I've never sort of been a fairly reasonable person, I guess most people that know me would say. So I fell into the conservation mindset accidentally just by doing. And I, learning about the history of wildlife and especially animals that have been hunted and fished in the U.S. And, I was talking to people this weekend because this summer, I've never been a great fisherman. I've never put in the time to become a great fisherman. And that's been part of my problem. I grew up on a lake in the summer up in Michigan, southwest Michigan, or southeast Michigan, sorry. And, I'd been around fishing my whole life, but I've never taken it seriously. So this summer I've kind of made it a goal to really target species, starting at the entry level. Like I don't need to get ahead of myself and try and be this quote unquote master angler thinking I'm some sort of hard ass, fisherman. I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm starting small. This whole summer, spring and summer so far, I'm going to spend targeting species, crappie, basically something that's not too difficult, learning about their habitats and learning about, things like barometric pressure affects them and depth and cover and things like this that every kid probably learned when they were 10 years old. And as I was saying, I'm the continual student. I never claim to be good at anything. I just really kind of think it's important to me to get my own food at this point. And, I don't know where that's going to take me down the road, but learning from people that I've been around, at the Hunt Fish Podcast Summit and, people I've talked to on the podcast, it's just really becoming very important to me. And, the change in conservation ideology is so funny because I talk to people. There's a lot of people up at the lake that my family has property at. It's like a community. And a lot of the people there are older, and they're always talking about, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, you could get as much X fish as you wanted. There were no limits. And now we got all these limits and size limits. And it's funny how the things don't equate to the conservation mindset, because a lot of people have this ideology that the earth is just abundant forever. And, you fish out something, you fish certain species at certain times of the year, they're not going to repopulate in the numbers and the sizes that they were in years previous. I mean, it's pretty obvious. There's been years up at the lake where I've caught bluegill that are the size of my hand. And then there's been years where I catch, things that are like 2 inches long. And, you start to see those cycles and you start thinking, it's really important to understand why the government and states put limits on fish and size limits and stuff so their populations can grow and be healthy. And then you start learning about things like maybe I shouldn't try and catch all these fish while they're nesting, and then basically the nest is going to get eaten if I pull the fish away from that. There's nobody there to protect it. It's going to those fish, and there's not going to be more fish next year, and so on and so forth. So it's hard to really balance all of these things when you're trying to learn. It's so overwhelming with anything, whether it's hunting, fishing, whether it's backpacking, whether it's learning about conservation or plastic pollution in the oceans. Any of these concepts, when you first dive into them, are overwhelming, and they're just like, what the hell do you do? But the most important part that we kind of take for granted nowadays is the persistence part of it. I think back to 5-6 years ago when I started hunting, it was so overwhelming. I had the most intense time trying to wrap my head around this, and all you can do is take it one day, one step at a time. You know, sitting out in the woods, not a clue what you're doing, leads to you observing deer, what they're doing day in, day out, you know, where they're entering the wood lots from where I live, you know, where they're coming into the woods, out of the woods, what time of the day. You start to see the patterns, and then you start to, you know, read the literature, watch shows about this, learning how deer operate as a species. And then you kind of become a little bit more in tune with them, and you stop doing so much guessing as you are trying to like kind of piece the puzzle together. And over time, you just get more skilled and more skilled. So I know that going into trying to become a better fisherman. And, you know, a lot of people that are ultra successful in their craft are very, very determined in one thing. Like if the newest example is the new Cameron Hanes book that came out. I mean, amazing story. He's talking about how he's just like very proficient in like one or two things, and that's it. And that's why he's to the level he's at. And that's really difficult for me as an outdoorsman myself. I love all of it. I really love hunting. I really love fishing. I really love backpacking. I really love conservation. So it's hard for me to focus on one thing at a time. And, you know, I came from different mindsets. You know, I've not to say that anybody's mindset is good or bad. Everybody does things in different ways. And I've like the time of the year is so cyclical, especially up where I live, you know, with we have these gnarly winters, and then we can have these like, you know, really hot, humid summers up here. And there's so many places that I could take advantage of different wildlife throughout the year. Like obviously there's the deer season, there's squirrel season, there's different fishing seasons, there's like ice fishing, there's, you know, fishing in the summer. All these animals operate differently in different times of the year. And learning all this right now is overwhelming, but I know that I just need to stick with it and be patient over time, and I will get better. Like this weekend was a lot of firsts for me. I spent 9 hours, give or take, on Saturday up at the lake with my friend Derek, he's done a podcast with me before of a backpacking trip we went on probably a year or two ago. I don't remember how long ago that was, but I'll put a link somewhere. But, you know, Derek and I are really into fishing. He went ice fishing with me this winter. You know, he tagged along for a lot of the BS adventures that I went through. And, you know, fishing can be very frustrating. And I think it's because we just kind of, everybody assumes that there's a lot of luck involved. But this weekend I spent targeting one species. I spent targeting crappie. And I've been told by my dad, I've been told by tons of other people, everybody's got their little trick for fishing that they use. Everybody, like how to catch the big bass, how to catch the this, the that, the bluegill, this, every, you know, muskie. Everybody has their trick. And then, you know, trying to become not a one-trick pony is very difficult because you have to have a deeper understanding of the way that it operates. So I spent 9 hours on the water trying to target one species. I caught one crappie with the targeted rig that I've researched the living shit out of this year, trying to, you know, perfect. And I'm going to keep working on it, you know, reading books. I had an old fisherman book that's like at a garage sale or something. I've been reading about targeting crappie, and it's like all this information is so overwhelming, but I know if I just take the sound advice, keep plugging away at it, it'll eventually all start to make sense. And, you know, a lake can be an intimidating place to fish, an inland lake, especially, you know, the bigger it is, the more choices you have. Luckily, the lake I'm in is fairly small, not incredibly deep, you know, so the options that I have are somewhat limited, which works out to learn for me because I can try different targeted areas. But as, you know, the example I'm getting at is I finally have caught a crappie on a rig set up for crappie, a jig with a soft tail. I got, you know, bobber, the technique where it was like slip corking, where it just slides on, like every time you reel in, the jig floats down and it's supposed to attract the crappie, and if it gets in their line of sight, they'll go after it. I caught one. I was very excited because it's like you spend all day doing the same thing and you start to second guess yourself, like, oh, it's not working. Should I change lures? Should I try a different tactic? But it feels good to finally like get the one thing. And it's not to say I'm an expert, and there's people out there that are probably like, are you an idiot? Crappie are one of the easiest fish to catch. But I'd never caught one on this lake specifically in my entire life. Not that I've tried that hard. So it's just a matter of, understanding, again, habitat, how they operate, what depths they're going to be at. And there's so many variables that you have to take into account. There's like barometric pressure, there's water temperature, there's just time of day, time of year. And it's so frustrating. But that's what it takes to be successful. That is like what needs to happen for me to be able to accomplish that goal. So that's like a constant battle that I have with myself, is like, stop trying to be good at everything at once. Stop trying to be good at catching bass and bluegill and crappie and, walleye. And, like, pick one, stick with it, figure that one out, move on to the next. It'll all start to make sense. And, that gives me a deeper appreciation for conservation, because I'm thinking now, what steps can I, as a person, one person, do in a lake that I've lived on or, had access to from my family my whole life? What steps can I take to make sure that the fish populations are healthy and, go above and beyond? I don't know really enough at this point to be able to make those changes, but I'm going to study and, figure out what I can and can't do legally, I guess. But, trying to establish these habitats so it can become a great lake for fishing, because there's tons of kids up there. It's awesome to watch them catch fish, and it's awesome to be able to see people eat the fish, and it's such a great thing. And getting people excited about the outdoors, to care about conservation in the end. If I can do something to make it better for everyone, then I would like to try my best to do that. Life is hard, and we're out here doing larger-than-life things, whether it's pushing ourselves physically in the outdoors or mentally at work or in the podcast studio. Absolute Aid is here to help you focus, recover, and stay calm during your most intense moments. Absolute Aid, created by nature, made with science, for those who seek to do more. But yeah, I just wanted to pop on here and kind of think out loud about, how much patience it takes to be good at this stuff. It's like really disheartening sometimes to think about. Like, I know this is going to take a lifetime to figure out. And it's like, if it's that important to me, then I'll keep at it. So it's just like the podcast. Things don't always grow as quick as you'd like, and things don't always, end up being the way that you want them immediately. And so many of us want that instant gratification and success all the time, and that's realistically not how it works. Anybody who's successful will tell you that there's no overnight successes, and if there are, they're very few and far between. This stuff takes a lot of effort, and I see so many people get frustrated by, like, not catching the fish the first time they go out, or not getting the deer. And it's like, you have to realize that it's a hard process. We've gotten so far away from that as a society, and it's not normal anymore to go out and hunt and fish like we used to. We used to have to do that to survive and supplement, and it's a completely different world. It's a completely different landscape. There's less wildlife than there used to be. So like we all have to become very specialized and very patient and learn. It's not unattainable. It's just a little bit more difficult. And, I think that's what draws so many people my age now and anyone of any age at this point to hunting, especially people that didn't grow up doing it. I think we're getting drawn to it because it's a challenge. It's, getting us in touch with the natural world again. It's kind of getting us in touch with the life cycle, life and death. And it's very important. And, I have a documentary coming out here. I don't have a release date yet, that my friend Seth and I made, where we talk about all these things with professionals in the industry, the life and death cycle. We've got why conservation and hunting are important and relevant nowadays, and preservation and stuff. And, this will all be supplemented by podcasts and things like that are going to be coming out with people, and, other resources we'll have available for you guys to check out also, because I'm really trying to dive deep into this topic and understand why this all matters now, especially like why there's this resurgence of people like me and Jonathan with Redbeard Outdoors that I've had on the podcast. And, there's young people, Turner Rowland, who's been on the podcast, him and his brother, and younger people who are just kind of reviving this on their own, not ever having been involved in, potentially hunting before. And, why we're all more vested in just conservation and principles and ethics other than just killing something and getting meat to provide. Like, that's a huge reason that we're all for it. And I'm not speaking for these other guys. They've been on the show and I've talked to them in detail about this kind of stuff in the past. But it's like, everybody is kind of, on this path to understand that hunting is more than just killing stuff, and conservation is so important. And, I've had long detailed talks about this with like James Appleton from the 46 to 46 podcast. And it's awesome to see that, people are taking this deeper than just a new hobby. And so that's kind of just a thought I had. I really wanted to throw that out there and just kind of give my thoughts on how things are going for me, and almost to remind myself that I need to be patient too, because it's so overwhelming, like I said at the beginning, to undertake all of this stuff. But it means so much to me, and it's so part of my day-to-day life at this point that's all I think about and do is read books. I've been watching reruns of Bill Dance Outdoors, on targeting specific species, and just learning as much as I can so that I can be successful in attaining my own food, which all comes back to you need food to survive. And I'm just kind of getting tired of eating boring prepackaged food, the same stuff that you get at the store every day. It feels so much better to get it on my own. I know that's cliche as hell, and I know that everybody's saying that right now, but it's true. It feels so much more exciting. I get excited, even though it's the same thing over and over again. Deer burger. I'm excited about it because I did it. I got it. I made it. And I know where it came from. I know that there's nothing screwed up going on with it. I literally watched it from the beginning to the end. It's mine. Same with the fish. Starting to figure out how to garden and grow my own food. It's all things that I'm like, hey, it might be a little bit blah after a while. It's like eating the same thing every day, but I made it. I made it happen through my own will. And that's what's important to me. Same with like staying in shape. I don't necessarily enjoy the grind of exercising every freaking day to try and like stay in shape so that I can do the things I enjoy out the outdoors. But I know that the other side of that is not a good place where I do not want to be. It's very important to me personally and a lot of other people to kind of make sure that we're taking things under our control to be the best that we can be. And that's what it's all about. Whether it's about the outdoors or not, it's about being the best that you can be in any given moment. And it never feels like enough. And that's just the inherent drive that I have. I don't know where that's coming from. I haven't done anything to, have this drive. It's just never feeling satisfied, never feeling like you've known enough. Because I could learn everything that there's possibly learn about crappie. And then there's trout. Then there's ocean fish. Then there's salmon. Then there's, bears. Then there's moose. And there's never anything. So that's a thrill, and that's a challenge. And that's what keeps me and like people I just mentioned going, is like we just want that next hard thing. Because what is hard now becomes easy eventually. And when that becomes easy, you need a new hard in your life to keep it going. So just some thoughts on, the path that I've been taking. I'm committed to this right now. I can't see myself stopping this. I've already been on this road for like 10 years now, and I don't ever see that stopping. So, I want to thank you all for listening to the podcast and dealing with my ramblings. I really appreciate all of you that check in and, tune in, hear what I have to say. I got some great guests coming up for you. And if you have any thoughts on what I'm saying, leave me a comment on Instagram. You can go on the Aptitude Outdoors Facebook, leave a comment. You can leave a comment here on YouTube. You can't leave comments on the actual podcast, but you can leave ratings and reviews. I'd really appreciate that if you would leave me a rating on iTunes, and now you can leave ratings on Spotify. I'd also appreciate it if you could subscribe to this YouTube channel. And I also have a new Aptitude Outdoors YouTube channel where I will be posting my documentaries and short videos coming up soon. I'm working on a ton right now. It's a pain in the butt to juggle all this stuff, but I freaking love it. So thanks, you guys. I will see you next week with another episode.